north. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
on TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Now, with the Labour Party conference now well underway in Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer has announced plans to end the UK's dependence on fossil fuels by 2030. The leader of the opposition will use the annual gathering to set out his energy plan and appeal to voters who are, as he says, sick and tired of soaring energy costs. He opened the conference with a tribute to the late Queen.
She knew that the country she came to symbolise is bigger than any one individual or institution. An example that taught us that whatever challenges we face, the value of service endures. And a reminder that the creativity, the hard work, the enterprise that defines this nation is as abundant now as it ever was.
The Deputy Labour leader says Britain is at a crossroads as she addressed her party's annual conference. During a lengthy speech, Angela Rayner vowed Labour would raise economic standards by clawing back public money from those who failed to deliver for taxpayers. She outlined the party's plans for new rights for workers, announcing what she calls a fair work standard. It aims to guarantee job security, training and union access. She also promised to pump money back into pockets of local communities.
The moment of choice is upon us, our movement, to show our country what we can do together. A Labour government to unite this country through the darkest times ahead. A Labour government to hand power back to the people and the places that once powered Britain. And a Labour government that will always be on the side of working people.
The leader of the RMT union warned the railway industry is in crisis. During a fringe meeting at the Labour Party conference, Mick Lynch criticised public service contracts and claimed a number of train operators are close to collapse. However, he did say a meeting with Transport Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan was a step forwards, although no progress has been made in breaking the deadlock. Voting is underway in Italy and it could see the election of the country's most right-wing government since World War II and its first female Prime Minister. An alliance led by Giorgia Meloni called Brothers of Italy appeared on course for victory when the last opinion polls were published. However, support for the left-leaning Five Star movement has picked up in recent days. Voting continues until 10 p.m. UK time. The Defence Secretary plans to spend at least £52 billion on Britain's military in response to Russian aggression. In his first interview since Liz Truss became Prime Minister, Ben Wallace said it would be used to grow Britain's armed forces. He told the Sunday Telegraph the 3% spending increase comes after decades of defending against cuts. The Foreign Secretary will travel to Asia tomorrow as part of Britain's diplomatic tilt towards the region. The Foreign Ministry says James Cleverly will start his 3-day trip in Japan, then head to South Korea and Singapore. He'll also attend the state funeral of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during that trip. A clean-up operation's underway after Tropical Storm Fiona devastated Canada's Atlantic coastline. Hundreds of thousands of people are without power and a state of emergency has been declared, though there have been no reports of injuries or deaths. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has deployed the military to help with the country's recovery.
There have been evacuation orders issued. Hundreds of thousands of people are without power. There are reports of roads washed out and homes destroyed. We've all seen the images. This is a very powerful and dangerous storm.
And a flotilla lit up part of the River Thames in London last night as a tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth. As part of an installation called Reflections, 150 illuminated boats travelled from Albert Bridge to Tower Bridge at 7 o'clock. The Queen's row barge Gloriana, rowed by Ben Fogle, was the centrepiece. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
So good afternoon. It is fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, the late Queen Elizabeth II was one of the most unifying forces in my lifetime, I believe the world has ever seen. And she not only did a great job in securing the lineage as well as the legacy of the royal family, but she also set an impeccable example of dignity and unity. Now, I was hoping that her example was something that we could all learn from. I, for one, will be taking a leaf out of her book, and I was hoping that perhaps Prince Harry would remove all of the leaves from his and simply bin his book altogether. Now, after seeing the Fab Four together in what looked like unity and an apparent request for a delay in publication of his memoirs, amidst warnings that further attacks on the royal family would significantly undermine his own standing, I suspected most of us hoped that Prince Harry was reconsidering publication. Political commentator Niall Gardner said there is far less appetite for books from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in the wake of Queen Elizabeth II's death. He said any attacks on the royal family would be seen as being in very poor taste. Prince Harry, take heed. The Queen was loved and respected globally. And after Tom Bower's book, Revenge, which didn't paint the couple in a glowing light, yet another book has emerged, Courtiers, The Hidden Power Behind the Crown by Valentine Lowe, which expresses the deterioration of the relationship of those around the Sussexes, in particular their staff, or Sussex survivors, which is what the staff apparently called themselves after their experiences with the couple. Now, they can't all be lying. When initially announcing his memoirs, Prince Harry said, "I'm writing this not as the prince I was born, but as the man I have become." And according to publisher Penguin, who apparently already paid the prince half of his fee in advance, which it is reported is in the region of £17 million, Harry's memoir will share for the very first time the definitive account of the experiences, adventures, losses and life lessons that have helped shape him. Harry says, "I've worn many hats over years, both literally and figuratively, and my hope is that in telling my story, the highs and lows, the mistakes, the lessons learned, I can help show that no matter where we come from, we have more in common than we think." Now, I've been biting my tongue because I was hoping that this pair would see sense. But try this hat on for size. Grow up, stop whinging, and appreciate the amazing benefits and opportunities that are all around you. We'd all have a lot more respect for you if you just held your hands up and frankly apologised for all the damage that you've caused and bin the book. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. At 4:20, it's the Great British Debate, and I'm asking, will Starmer's green gamble pay off? Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to deliver a new era of economic growth and permanently lower energy bills by turning the UK into an independent green superpower before 2030. Where have I heard that already before? Come on. He's not here now, is he? Wasn't it Boris Johnson that said something very similar? Look what happened to him. Now, basically, through a massive expansion of wind and solar energy, that was his plan. But will Sir Keir Starmer's wager wow the public? And at 4:45 in Worldview today, we're going all over the globe, from Donald Trump being sued for years of bank and tax insurance fraud, allegedly, to the mobilisation of Russian troops in occupied zones of Ukraine. And after the death of Mahsa Amini in police custody, Iran's president pledged to deal decisively with the protests, which have now spread to most of Iran's 31 provinces. And then, coming up at 5 in Outside, remember this?
I'm too sexy for my shirt. Too sexy for my shirt. So sexy it hurts.
Yeah, that's right, said Fred. Will join me in the studio. The multi-platinum duo have had #1 hits in 70 countries across the world, releasing 9 albums and reaching 30 million in global sales. We'll talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on The Outside. That is on the way. Join me, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Let's do this. Let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist. It really hurt my tongue to say it. Journalist. It's in the script, so I'll do it. Danny Kelly. Whose arm have you twisted to get that in there, Danny?
Look, it's just a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah.
And it's nice after 12 months, some final journalistic recognition.
From the times you spent at the
BBC.
I knew it. I was wondering.
At the BBC.
We're like 10 minutes in, but I prompted you. So, I might as well start with you, Danny, then. Harry's apparently going to bring his book. Well, they're saying that there may be a delay, but he has already accepted apparently half the advance.
Whoever said there's no appetite for it is clearly wrong, because, Penguin have given him £17 million.
But they said after the Queen's death, though. I mean...
I still think there's an incredible appetite. Very much so. Now, I'm a royalist. I queued for 7.5 hours last Thursday, and I enjoyed the company of an 89-year-old ex-Royal Marine, and I'm incredibly patriotic. I don't want the book to be printed if it damages or harms the legacy of Philip or the Queen, because Philip came from an era where you could say certain things that today are unacceptable. I want to know whether Harry is embittered before he met Meghan, or whether this is post-Meghan. I think that's fairly significant. I remember Harry jumping out of Apache helicopters, firing machine guns. He was a man's man, full of testosterone. He seems to have changed somewhat. And I want to know whether it's the influence of Meghan Markle.
You're treading on tricky territory. Nigel, what do you make of what he's saying?
Well, I mean, the whole thing is, if he's getting £17 million as an advance for the book, he can't take the nasty bits out of it. I mean, the whole thing about Prince Harry is, I wish he'd stayed a royal. I think that he should have bitten the bullet, done his duty, and stayed with the royal family, and that would preclude any books or any talking about it or whatever. I do appreciate that, having not stayed within the fold, he's got to make a living out there, and all he's got to sell is his name and Meghan's, and also to sell out the royal family. That's what it comes down to. I wish he wasn't doing it. I can't see the publishers saying, oh, yeah, we'll take that bit out that criticises Prince Philip or criticises King Charles or criticises the Queen. They want that in there. Yeah. I agree with Danny. There's a huge appetite for it. Yeah. It'll sell. It will sell in this country, or there are people who complain about it. Yeah. It'll be a huge success abroad.
Even royal fans, royalists will want to read it.
I don't think so. I think, especially if he brings it out in November, which is when the initial time it was planned for. I don't think so at all. I mean, people like me, who I would have loved to have read a lovely, positive book about his time as a royal, but he's always whinging. I mean, he just doesn't stop. This is going to be another whinge fest, isn't it? He's going to be saying, oh, and this and that, and then that, woe is me, and it's terrible, my experiences, and yet he is a member of one of the most privileged families on earth.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think Harry, if he had a choice as an embryo before he was born, if he had a choice to be an entitled prince or to live the life of a normal man, what do you think he would have chosen? Now he knows what it's like living the life of a prince.
I think he'd lived the life of a prince.
Oh, no, I think the opposite.
I disagree.
No, I agree. I think that...
no, he lived the life of...
I mean, OK, that if you're a member of the royal family, it's not that bad a gig. You're not going to actually end up on the streets or anything like that.
Exactly.
However, there is a lot of duty involved. Your life isn't your own. No. And whenever they are a little bit candid about it, they do say, we'd rather it didn't happen. So when George VI ascended the throne because Edward VIII abdicated, the last thing he wanted was to be king.
What an ungrateful bunch. Listen, I would absolutely love that. What is it? I mean, you know, my parents told me that I was a princess or a queen or something in Ghana when they were there. I mean, it was probably all lies, but I mean, you know, it made me feel good. Listen, if somebody told me that I would be, I'm an embryo and you're going to be born to the most wealthiest family on earth, pretty much, and you're going to be a queen, your life won't be your own, which it never is, even if you're not in that sort of family, I would take it in a heartbeat.
But it's obvious that he wouldn't have done, because he's chosen to live his life in America as a private individual.
I don't think that's obvious. I think what it is sometimes people lose perspective. He hasn't got a perspective. He hasn't got the reality of what people are living like in the real world. If he saw that, he might change his mind. Because he doesn't know, does he? He doesn't know. He's not seeing people... He doesn't know what it's like to struggle, to not have enough money to do anything, or to not be able to pursue the things that you dream of because you can't afford to, or to not have food, or to not be...
There are things he couldn't do. I mean, the one thing, when he served in Afghanistan, in fairness to him, he wanted to serve along with his mates in the front line. Yeah. And when he was there, the whole thing had to be kept secret in case the Taliban tried to kidnap him. So he was never allowed to do the things he wanted to do. Once it came out in a foreign publication, not a British one, I have to say, that he was in Afghanistan, his tour had to be cut short. He was understandably hugely resentful about that, and that's the kind of... He liked that life. He enjoyed that. He might have made a career out of the army and wasn't allowed to as a royal.
Listen, there's nobody was stopping him from leaving the fold of the royal family. He can do that, but don't sell them out in that manner. That's the thing. No, if you want to be a civilian, you don't want to be seen as a prince. You know, there are many things I would like to do, but because of my birthright and because me being a queen,
being a princess and all that,
being a princess and all that, I can't do. It's terrible. I have such a headache over it. But you know, there are plenty of things that lots of people can't do because of one situation or another. That's the real world. Welcome to it.
That's a great point, because he's basically selling out his own family.
Exactly.
And you know, that's the definition of almost a traitor, to sell out your own family. Yes. So he's lived this life. Let's go with this life of luxury and entitlement, and he's never had to work a day in his life because the money's already there. Now he changes his route in life. He's married this woman. I think a lot of people think that she's poisoned him, and this is why I'm keen to find out when this difference Harry emerged.
Well, listen, I don't think that's fair to say she's poisoned him, to just pull that back on that, because frankly, he's got his own mind. You know, she didn't tell him to dress up as a Nazi going to a party. Do you know what I mean?
That was pre-Meghan.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, though. He has his own mind, he makes his own mistakes, he does his own decisions based on the information he has. So he is responsible as a man for his behaviour, his choices and everything he does. So I can't blame her for that.
If that was the case, why didn't he say to Meghan, whatever you do, don't mention that awkward occasion when someone said about mixed race and what did he say?
Have you ever tried to say something in fact when your partner says, don't you dare say anything? See what happens.
But that new book that you mentioned in the monologue, Nana, where the Valentine Lowe book, I mean, what that's saying is that there is some suspicion that Meghan was planning all this because what she really wanted to do was make a load of money. And the only way of making a load of money was, one, to be within the royal family and then to leave it. And she actually set the way to go and do it. I don't know if it's true, it's what the book claims.
You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, can you? Frankly, they're both culpable for their own behaviour, and I think, really, it's pretty bad.
I don't trust her.
I think they probably fuel each other. I think they are, you know, in my view, I see them as quite a toxic relationship. I don't know what it's really like. They might be amazing, but this sort of outcome, when people are together, it doesn't look good.
So he's not his own man? He's part of a toxic relationship?
No, but they are. I think it's a level of codependence.
But when
that does, you know, that
yeah,
one
so
sparks off the other. But that's life.
But when she said that she hadn't heard of him, is that what she said? She had to Google Prince Harry or something like that?
That sounds unlikely,
just
doesn't it?
A load of baloney.
Yes.
So I'm not a fan of Piers Morgan, but I think Piers Morgan, retrospectively, thinking about it, I think he's been right about
Well, you may
Meghan.
say that, but in her view, it's Meghan's truth.
Yep.
Right, this is GBNews. Welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, will Starmer's green gamble pay off? Now, Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to deliver a new era of economic growth and permanently lower energy bills by turning the UK into an independent green superpower. Now, I think I've heard this one before 2030, through a massive expansion of wind and solar energy. But is that realistic? Can you actually really do that with wind and solar? Does it have the capacity to be able to power this country? Are renewables really the future? And is Sir Keir Starmer's wager going to wow the public? Send me your thoughts. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also get in touch via Twitter. Tweet us at GBNews. I've got a poll up right now. I'm asking, will Sir Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? Cast that vote now. We'll be back after the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be turning cloudier and windier as a band of rain pushes in from the north. Here are the details. Starting off in the southwest, and after a fine day, it'll be somewhat cloudier by this evening, but it will stay dry, with rain not expected until tonight. A similar picture in the southeast and around London as well. The cloud will have increased through the afternoon, but it will be a dry end to the day. Whilst 1 or 2 showers are possible across North Wales, further south it will stay dry this evening, turning increasingly cloudy and windy though. That's how things are shaping up across the Midlands as well. Here there may be the odd shower towards the north, whilst further south it will be dry but cloud and winds will increase. Meanwhile, in the northeast of England, we can expect a largely cloudy and blustery end to the day. There's a chance of some showery rain, most likely further west, before heavier rain arrives later. By 7 p.m, the band of rain will have cleared northern Scotland. However, heavy rain will lay across southern Scotland, bringing some heavy rain here with strong winds as well. It'll also be a wet day, end to the day, for much of Northern Ireland as that rain spreads in. The cloudy, wet and windy weather means it will stay mild overnight. The band of rain will continue southwards, reaching southern parts by the end of the night, with showers in the north. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It's 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and don't forget, download the GB News app where you can pick up all the programmes. But it's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, will Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? Now, at the party conference this morning, Labour has set out plans, finally, to make the UK the first major economy in the world to generate all of its electricity without using fossil fuels. Now, Sir Keir Starmer says achieving zero carbon energy by 2030 will be a key priority if he wins the next election. Labour has already unveiled plans to spend £28 billion a year on making the UK economy more green. But the party believes it can win votes by promoting green energy as a way to generate economic growth, in contrast to the Tory tax cuts for the well-off. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, will Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? Now, to discuss this green gamble, I'm joined by former CEO of Energy UK, Angela Knight. Angela, thank you so much for joining me. Angela, so Keir Starmer, he's talking about this wonderful idea of literally everything coming from green energy, which I presume also means renewables, or is that something different? And if that is the case, is that actually a possibility?
Well, as far as I understand it, he's talking about renewables and he's talking about nuclear. So maybe we should call it low carbon as being the sort of generic term. And also we're talking about electricity. So we still will need gas, of course, for central heating and the like. Now, what is actually in his plan? It's the same sort of thing as we've seen announced by all political parties, actually, over the last few years. That we need to move to low carbon electricity. We need to do what we can about use of hydrogen and use of batteries. And I think as far as high level statements are concerned, they're all fine. But the key questions are these: how much is it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? And have we actually got the technology in place? Right now, to me, I think even the path that we're on seems quite aggressive in answering all those questions. And to bring it forward to the end of this decade, I think is probably one of those things that politicians say in haste and regret at leisure.
Seems very odd that he should be sort of talking in a way, in the same way that this is the sort of thing that Boris Johnson was talking about, right? So I think his was a net zero. Now maybe Sir Keir Starmer was calling it something else. This was not successful in terms of Boris Johnson. I don't know why he thinks that it'll be a good idea, and I don't even think it's realistic. I mean, Britain's already introduced a new interim target to reduce emissions by 78% by 2035. I mean, isn't he just recycling an idea that we've already had?
Well, that to me is exactly what is happening. There is a difference from what he's saying, which is greening up the electricity system and net zero, of course, but, you know, equally so. They're all part, if you like, of the same whole. Now, if we look at the actual practicalities, and I think that one thing that this crisis has taught us, and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, is that anything that we are going to be doing and saying in the way of changing, altering or whatever the supply of gas and electricity in this country has got to be realistic and it's got to be costed. Because it is quite correct, we can go hell for leather and build all sorts of additional wind farms, both onshore and offshore. But of course, the wind doesn't blow all the time. So what are you going to do for the times that the wind isn't blowing and your renewables are being intermittent? And that's when you've got to have a reliable backup. And if you're going to have a reliable backup, the only way that we can do it on low carbon is build more nuclear. Now, you've heard me say before that the nuclear I'm talking about is the small-scale repeatable ones, which take a couple of years to build and they cost a couple of billion. A couple of billion is still a lot of money, but it does mean you can get investment from pension funds and the like into it. But you certainly can't do all that in the next sort of 7 or 8 years. And the cost is going to be very, very high indeed. And that means that we're going to pay for it in taxation, or we're going to pay for it on our domestic and industry bills, or we're going to do both. And to me, it's dishonest not to be realistic, and it's dishonest not to put costs and how we pay for it into the mix as well on any of these statements.
Well, Angela, stay right there, because it sounds like Keir Starmer is doing his own sort of form of recycling. I couldn't resist. Let's have a chat with Andrew. Andrew, are you there? He's the Deputy Director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montford. Andrew, OK. So Keir Starmer is saying net zero, pretty much, or he's calling it zero carbon. It sounds like the same thing. He's docked off 5 years or added 5 years or whatever he's doing with it. But this all rests on the premise that carbon is the enemy. I mean, for me personally, I haven't got enough evidence to show that carbon is actually the real enemy of the state. I mean, do you believe that this is the right priority for Keir Starmer on this?
Look, even if you believe the official view of what global warming might do to us, this is madness. Okay, we are already spending twice as much as the official estimate of the damage from global warming. This plan of Keir Starmer's is going to inflate that enormously. Everything Angela's talked about what we do when the wind doesn't blow is absolutely right. As soon as you start getting into things like energy storage, the costs blow up enormously. Now, nuclear is a possibility. Nuclear is not a very good partner for renewables because the wind's ramping up and falling down all the time. Nuclear tends to like to go steadily and it's not very good at responding to changes in renewables. The reality is, as Angela again said, is for years, if not decades, we're going to be stuck with gas. So while Liz Truss's plan put out earlier this week saying that it was pretty feeble, but she did at least recognise that we are going to need cheap gas to keep the prices down. Keir Starmer's plan is just an embarrassment. It's a joke, frankly, because it doesn't even address the problem of what we do when the wind isn't going to blow. So essentially, I think both parties' plans are a recipe. Perhaps we might get prices down from the catastrophic levels they're at now. But if we are going to continue to live the lives that we've had for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we need to get energy prices back to the levels they were 2 years ago. And that isn't going to happen with renewables. You've got to remember, renewables started in about 2002, okay? And for the first 20 years we installed renewables, prices went up and up and up every year. They doubled over the space of 20 years. That was before the current energy crisis. So to argue that we're going to install more renewables and prices are going to come down to what they were before would be disingenuous. Now, Keir Starmer hasn't said that. He's just said they're going to come down. Well, yeah. Let's talk about how we get them back to a sensible level. Let's talk about £50 a megawatt hour, not 300 or 400 as it is now.
Well, I want to bring Angela Knight back in on this because I know she's still there. Angela, does that sound more realistic to you? Does what Andrew's saying?
It does.
Sort of, yeah.
Yes, it does very much indeed. I do. Sorry, did I talk over you?
No, carry on.
No, go ahead, Angela. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I do think that there's a lot of work that needs to be put in to hydrogen, because clearly when you have surplus electricity, if you can crack the water, form hydrogen, store hydrogen, it is a way of storing power, and it is a way to produce something that will be low carbon fuel. But what it isn't is it isn't practical now, in the sense that yes, you can theoretically do it, but it's not there in technology available on large scale. And secondly, it's also going to be pretty expensive. Where I would go first of all is, and I think again, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a crack record on this, what I would do is I would look at the electricity wholesale market. I would split the wholesale market that is within our control into a low carbon pool and a high carbon pool, and I would change the algorithm. If you do that, that means that the power that we use is not always being pulled up in price by the most expensive generator, which at the moment is gas. And therefore, any sort of logical calculation brings down that pool by 20-25%. So I do that very quickly indeed. Then I do believe that there is a lot to be said for making us much more secure on our gas, because whichever way you look at it, gas is a sensible interim fuel for us. And we don't know how long that interim is, that being between now and getting to net zero, because in many respects it's dependent upon the price that people are prepared to pay.
So, Angela, finally then, do you think Sir Keir Starmer's gamble will pay off? And do you think he's heading in the right direction with this?
Well, as I say, he's hitting a few emotional spots, no doubt, with what he's saying. But once the practicalities start to hit home, I think he might regret it. And as I say, I'm not keen on these big political statements which come in uncosted. I don't think it is clever. I think it's deceptive of the people in this country, and I don't like that at all.
And Andrew, final word to you. It's a yes or no one, because we've only got about 10 seconds. Do you think that his gamble will pay off?
Very different in 6 months' time.
Oh, I wish I'd heard that. Unfortunately, I didn't know. Was that a no then? Yes or no?
No, it's going to be a disaster. If it ever happened, it would be a disaster.
Well, that's pretty clear.
Two no's.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Two no's.
Two no's. Andrew Montford and also Angela Knight. There you go. So two people who have got expertise in this, and somebody from Net Zero Watch, and also Angela Knight, who is an incredible woman who knows all about energy, thinks that it's a disaster. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua on GB News, on TV and on digital radio. After the break, we will continue with our great British debate. I'm asking, will Sir Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. And don't forget, coming up at 5 o'clock in Outside, remember this.
I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts.
That's great. Yes, of course, Right Said Fred will be joining me in the studio. They're a multi-platinum duo. They've had a load of #1 hits across the world, 70 countries in fact. They've released 9 albums, 30 million sales across the globe. We'll be talking all the highs, lows and lessons learned in Outside. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4:35. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. With the Labour Party conference underway in Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer has announced plans to end the UK's dependence on fossil fuels by 2030. The leader of the opposition will use the annual gathering to set out his energy plan and appeal to voters who are struggling with the soaring energy costs. The Deputy Labour leader says Britain is at a crossroads as she addressed her party's annual conference. Angela Rayner outlined Labour's plans for new workers' rights, announcing what she called a fair work standard. It aims to guarantee job security, training and union access. She also promised to pump money back into pockets of local communities.
Just as we were in 1997, we're now at a crossroads. The moment of choice is upon us. Our movement to show our country what we can do together. The next Labour government will pump money back into the pockets of local communities, the people who built Britain.
The leader of the RMT union warns the railway industry is in crisis. During a fringe meeting at the Labour Party conference, Mick Lynch criticised public service contracts and claimed a number of train operators are close to collapse. However, he did say a meeting with Transport Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan was a step forwards, although no progress has been made in breaking the deadlock. COVID testing in Scotland's healthcare system will change from next week. Starting Wednesday, health and social care workers will no longer need a weekly COVID test. The decision also applies to people admitted to hospital, but care home restrictions remain in place. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good afternoon. Where have you been? This is GB News. We're live on TV, on digital radio, and of course online. I'm Nana Akua. Now, at the top of the show, I was discussing Prince Harry and his memoirs or memwingers. Lots of you have been getting in touch. Colin says he seems quite content to be a prince when he was with previous girlfriends. It was only when he got joined at the hip to Meghan that he changed his mind. Jenny says, hope he stays put in the USA post-divorce. Never want him back after the way he's treated the Queen and Prince Philip. Yeah, it's odd that he seemed to think that because he wasn't directly saying anything horrible towards the Queen that it wouldn't affect her. Of course it would. It's just ridiculous. Sherry says Harry was already resentful of his position when he met Meghan, as he used to say to William, if you don't want to be king, I will. Oh dear, do you know that must be quite tricky because you're sort of the spare heir, and not even now. I think he's moved up one, but he's still fifth in line. But anyway, should we carry on? It's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, will Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? At the party conference this morning, Labour has set out plans to make the UK the first major economy in the world to generate all of its electricity without using fossil fuels. But the party believes it can win votes by promoting green energy as a way to generate economic growth, in contrast to Tory tax cuts for the well-off, which I don't quite agree with because I think everyone gets a bit of a tax cut on that. I think it's slightly disingenuous because a lot of people, there's different ways that the money's being raised. But for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, will Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by a political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. I didn't read the journalist. But I did it on purpose. No, I'm not doing that bit. Nigel, now you were telling me that you had a chat with Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I was interviewing for the Sunday Mirror on Friday in advance of the Labour Party conference. So I had a bit of an opportunity to probe his thinking about this whole green agenda. So where he's approaching it from is that he's taking climate change as an opportunity, and what he thinks that he should be able to do is that if you make Britain self-sufficient in energy by 2030, that would create something in the region of 500 to 700,000 jobs. We couldn't be held to ransom by people like Vladimir Putin. And also that would be a way of creating economic growth, which would be very different from the way Liz Truss wants to do it, which is basically with tax cuts. Basically with tax cuts. That's it. I can see it can work. If you're actually spending the money on it, and there's an £8 billion fund lying around there ready to start work on it, if you can get your nuclear, your solar, offshore, onshore, all renewables, hydrogen, and you really sort of double up on what we're doing at the moment, yes, you could reach the target. It would create loads of jobs, and the final thing would be, if we were self-sufficient in energy, our bills would be, he estimates, £475.
Well, but what they both said was that to do that would be extremely expensive. That's what they were saying. So the investment required to get everything in that way would be ridiculous. And if we think our bills are high now, they would be extortionate. That's what they were both saying. They're saying that it would be extremely expensive.
Well, it will be expensive, but most of it will be private investment anyway, because these will be the energy companies who will profit out of the products at the end of it. So, although there will be a bit of a hit to the taxpayer, the taxpayer's not picking all of it up. All the taxpayer is doing is kick-starting the programme.
Look, the question is, Nana, is it going to pay off? And the answer, in my view, is no, because it's in 8 years' time. This target's in 8 years' time. You've got Right Said Fred coming in the studio. They had that hit in 1991. Where have those 31 years gone? They have flown by. We're talking about 8 short years. And the reason I say the gamble is not going to pay off with the constituents, with the Labour voters, is that I think, my view, is that traditional Labour voters, forget the North London elite, forget those liberal, wealthy multimillionaires. We're talking about working class men and women. And you ask them, you poll them down a local council estate pub, whether they are bothered about this 2030 agenda. They would rather have cheap gas now. They'd rather that we reopen the oil fields. I'm not talking exclusively for every working class man or woman. I just think, generally speaking, the people who don't have that multi-million-pound deep pockets.
And I think, can I just say, well, I just wanted to add into there, that if we're all going electric, so no fossil fuels, it's not just the bills and things, it's electric cars. It's all the infrastructure that we as the public will have to buy to accommodate this, and that's got to be factored in. I don't think Keir Starmer's thinking that far ahead.
Well, I mean, that's the actual use of it. The first stage will be to produce it. So what you will get is electricity to heat and light your homes. From that point of view, it is thought through.
But what about, I'd need an electric car to go with this. An electric car's 44 grand. I haven't got 44 grand. A lot of people haven't got 44 grand. How are we going to do that?
I mean, Dana's the expert on the car thing, but they will come down in price.
Yeah, but not that quickly. 8 years.
Yeah, and there won't be the infrastructure to charge the damn things, in my view. They've really got to start catching up with what they're saying. The rhetoric which is coming out today in 2022, they need to start doing things now in order for us to be 2030 completely reliant on...
How's that going to work?
Well, if Keir Starmer wins the election, he can make a start on it. I mean, so...
Yeah, but he can't give me 44 grand to buy one of those cars, or the normal person, you know, out on the street, because what he's saying is net zero, which means no fossil fuels. Right, no fossil fuels. So no petrol or diesel-powered cars.
That's right.
So everybody, by 2030, none of us are allowed to have those cars.
Yep.
How?
And
already, that sounds ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it's a tall order, I admit.
It's ridiculous.
And he's made the point that it is not absolutely certain you'll reach the target by 2030.
Well, it's absolutely certain that he won't
set the target and try and reach it, which I think is probably the right thing to do. Once you start creating the jobs, once you put your back into it, everything else can follow. And once again, if we're all on electric cars, cars will come down in price. I wouldn't buy an electric car
No,
now.
exactly. But what's he going to do then? So this wonderful concept of net zero, what's he calling it, zero carbon. So we're all to scrap our perfectly normal working cars, because you've got to say you just bought yourself a petrol or diesel car recently, you have to get rid of that.
Well, they're being phased out anyway by 2030.
That's new cars, Nana.
Yeah, but currently...
If you want to buy a new car
Yeah.
by 2030, you're right, it's got to be electric. So if you're a petrol or diesel, you can't buy a new car.
Yeah, but that's not... I think that's so unfair. I think that's so wrong.
That's the word.
That's so wrong.
The word is
I haven't agreed
unfair.
to this. I haven't agreed to this net zero or zero. I don't even think... I mean, this is just my personal opinion, but I think that the science is flawed anyway. I don't even think that carbon is the reason why there's global warming. I suspect that's just my...
That's a different argument.
Yeah, but it's a different argument.
You have to accept global warming as a reality before you do any of this.
I can accept climate change as a reality. The climate will change.
Nana,
always.
You used the word unfair.
Yeah, I think it's totally unfair.
And I'm going to just speak generally. For the average, and I'm going to go back to the core vote for Labour, and there's a clue in the name, Labour. I think the average working class man and woman who are facing all of this net zero that they didn't really understand what it meant. They knew the phrase because it was on the 2019 manifesto by Boris Johnson. They understood the phrase, but they didn't understood what it entailed. I think that they will think when the UK pumps out 1% of global emissions, they look at China, they look at India, they look at the developing countries building coal-powered fire stations all the time, and they're thinking, what the hell are we... Why are we bothering? Why are we facing such punitive measures when we are 1% of global pollution?
Well, it's obviously got to be a global solution.
Correct.
To a global problem.
But it's
which
not
is
there.
what COP26 was trying to work on. I agree with you. We didn't get quite the agreement from China that we were hoping for. However, if at least we start moving this way, we would become the first major economy to have actually done this. Those people you're talking about in the pub will be pretty pleased if they're good...
Oh, I disagree.
Good
no, it's rubbish.
We're punching ourselves in our faces.
Yeah,
we are
with our
punching
own
ourselves
hands.
we are clenching our very own fists, and we are punching ourselves in our faces.
It's ridiculous. Listen, most people I speak to, they don't want to go with this net zero baloney. Most of them think it's nonsense. And if Sir Keir Starmer seriously went to speak to what would be his stronghold of supporters, he would find that most people don't want net zero. I don't know who he's representing, and I sincerely hope that Liz Truss scraps it.
He's representing millionaires, the North London liberal elite.
Well, no. I mean, if you're creating 700,000 jobs, that's hardly the North London elite.
But not within 8 years.
Well, the idea is you can do it within 8 years.
But when's the next election?
Well, it rather depends how long this trust lasts, really.
Well, let's just say, what's the maximum? When's the 5-year term up?
The maximum would be January 2025.
OK, so he wins the election. The first day, hits the ground running, and he's got to try and build all of these renewables in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
It's flawed.
No, it's flawed. It's flawed. It's not going to happen. It's ridiculous. And you even said it yourself. Oh, he might not reach the target. He knows he won't. We know he won't. It's just a ridiculous target. He shouldn't bother. Right, but this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice. This is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. So where should we head over to? Oh, should we go to Bristol?
The southwest.
Let's go to where there's a nice zoo there as well. Should we get one of the animals? Is it Lee? I'm joking. Lee Harris, welcome. Really good to have you on board. Lee, what do you think then? Keir Starmer, is he crazy with this green thing?
I agree with the panel, what you were saying about the ordinary working person. You know, I'm very pro renewable energy, as I'm sure a lot of people are, but I do believe that most people understand that they clearly don't work all the time. The technology needs improving. It's very expensive. And because of this, they need to be part of like an energy mix. I mean, my own view is, I was listening to what you were saying, Nana, I quite agreed with it, but my own view is trying to hit unnecessarily fast net zero targets that make us all poor in the short term. That sort of thinking is precisely what got us into this mess. Net zero policies to me seem extreme, especially as the UK has been a world leader in carbon reduction over the last 50 years. It's pretty insane that we're kind of punishing ourselves for all of the good work that we've done so far. But we need to be realistic. We need nuclear. We need to frack. We need to maximise extracting resources from the North Sea. We need to invest in renewables. And most importantly of all, in my view, is solve the puzzle of nuclear fusion, which not a lot of people are talking about at the moment, because they keep saying that's 10 years away. But technology is what's going to get us out of this mess. But demonising fossil fuels just for political gain, which is exactly what I believe Keir Starmer is doing, is unscientific and, quite frankly, tiresome. But will it work politically? I think I agree with what the panel is saying. At the moment, people's main concern is the cost of living crisis and sky-high energy costs. So it really depends on how it's going to hit people in the pocket. If Labour can prove that this will cost less in the short to medium term, and we can achieve our energy independence, and is able to justify somehow, which I don't believe he can, like not fracking and not taking advantage of all these resources we've got in the North Sea. If he can somehow justify that and prove on paper that it's going to be cheaper, yeah, of course, I think anyone, I don't think there'd be a single person that would say, yeah, that's popular. But I just don't think it's realistic. Listening to the experts you had on earlier, it's just going to cost too much money. It's going to impoverish the nation. I just think people want some common sense, and they're generally fed up of short-term decisions based on climate alarmism. And we should have been building more nuclear power stations ages ago.
Well, listen, Lee, very succinct. Thank you so much for that. That's Lee Harris. Thank you so much. I think I could just say it in one word. I think Keir Starmer, that policy is probably suicide. I wouldn't do it if I were you. But anyway, today I'm asking, will Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Let's have a look what Jimmy is saying. He says, I think achieving net zero is 100% doable, but only until battery technology improves. I think a renewable heavy grid will need nuclear energy as a backbone. And Johan says, it is a terrible idea. In my opinion, it's clear that Starmer is not at all capable of rational analysis. His ambitions are totally unachievable. Angus says, given the new nuclear power stations take at least 10 years to build, I believe there are currently no proven technologies that can store bulk solar and wind-generated electricity. I think Starmer is misleading people. And Callum says, it's fantasy politics without any serious detail on how Labour would deliver this. The technology isn't available to deliver this policy. Amy says, Labour has no power to do this, excuse the pun. And there is a poll up on Twitter throughout the show. I'm asking, will Keir Starmer's green gamble pay off? And currently 9% of you say yes. Well, you can guess 91% of you say no. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's World View. And today, we're going all over the world, from Donald Trump being sued for years of bank tax, insurance and fraud. That's allegedly, of course, because none of it's been proved, to the mobilisation of Russian troops in occupied zones of Ukraine. And after the deaths of Mahsa Amini in police custody, Iran's president pledged to deal decisively with the protests, which have now spread to most of Iran's 31 provinces. And then don't forget, coming up 5 o'clock in Outside, these guys, remember?
I'm too sexy for my shirt. Too sexy for my shirt. So sexy it hurts.
Yes, of course, Right Said Fred will join me in the studio. The multi-platinum duo have a number of hits all over the world. They've had loads of albums, 30 million sales globally. We'll talk highs, lows, lessons learned. What comes next on The Outside after this?
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel, and don't forget you can stream this live on YouTube. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board if you've just joined me. It's time now for Worldview. Let's go around the globe and find out what's happening elsewhere. Let's start by heading over to the United States. And as always, Trump has been in the news this week. Has seen Mr. Trump face being sued for up to $250 million. To discuss the latest Trump happenings, I'm joined by host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duttridge. Paul, what's going on with Trump?
Yeah, this is Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, has launched a civil suit against Donald Trump. Not just Donald Jr., Eric and Ivanka. They're being sued for basically fraudulently overestimating the value of his property empire and potentially underpaying tax based on erroneous valuations of the same property. So the gist of the court case, the gist of the investigation has been that he says there are some quite funny facts coming out about this. It's like his apartment turns out to be, his penthouse apartment at Trump Tower turns out to be 11,000 square feet, but he's estimated it at 33,000 square feet so that he could borrow against it. And then when he's writing off properties of no value, he is basically not claiming that on tax, or he's claiming that incorrectly on tax and benefiting from that. So on the one hand, he says, my properties are worth a fortune so that he can raise money against them. And then on the other hand, he's saying my properties are worthless so he can write them off as tax losses. And so that's the nub of the allegations against Donald Trump and Don Jr., Eric and Ivanka. And it's not a political hit job by the Attorney General. Just because Letitia James ran on her campaign policy in 2018 is we're going to get Trump. He's an illegitimate president. But this is not a political hit job. This is a sincere legal investigation.
Is it? Oh, God. Really? Well, I mean, that sounds like the sort of common thing that sort of happens. I don't think that's... I mean, is that enough for him to potentially not be able to run for president?
No, this is a civil suit. This is a civil suit. This is personal. This is just to cut him off at the legs, and this is an attack on his ego. This would merely bar him from holding corporate office or being a corporate, basically being able to CEO or hold any kind of corporate power in New York alone. He's now domiciled in Florida anyway, so it's it really is just, look, in 44 days, we have the midterm elections. The Attorney General, Letitia James, and I can't for a moment suggest that this is part of her 22 campaign, but she's up for re-election because she has a 4-year term. So it would be awful of me to suggest that some of this is just so that she can help get re-elected as Attorney General in New York. So it can't stop him running for office. Indeed, it's boosted his support again, because some people incorrectly see this as a political hit job.
Oh, I see. So it's not that. Well, listen, Paul, we'll have to leave it there, and we're going to head over quickly to Russia. Thank you very much. That's Paul Duttridge, Politics People podcast. Now, let's go over to Russia. There's been protests over mobilisation that's taken place in more than a dozen cities across Russia. Police arrested hundreds of people as authorities seek to crack down on dissent over the Ukraine war. I'm joined now by political commentator Danny Armstrong. Danny, we haven't got much time, so if you can wrap this in about 2 minutes, talk to me about what's going on.
2 minutes, no pressure. Okay, Nana, challenge accepted. Basically, what we're seeing going on now is mobilization of troops. What that means is anybody who's eligible to be called up and sent to Ukraine they're being recruited and sent to the front line. The protest that we're seeing now is basically, what I do want to stress, these are Russians that have been against the amorality and illegality of the war from day one. It isn't just because it's affecting their lives and they could be sent to the front line, but it's a very, very real possibility. I have friends, just last night, I phoned a friend. They said, I can't speak now. I'm in a taxi to the border with Ukraine because they were fleeing conscription and fleeing a draft summons. The draft summons were served to them at those protests. So basically what's going on in Russia now is that people are protesting in the streets. They're being manhandled and bundled off into a police van, arrested and handed draft summons. This goes for men of age who are eligible to serve in the army, as well as women if their profession, such as medic, is eligible as well. Now, for Vladimir Putin, what he's done is held these referendums that are going on until September the 27th in the Luhansk and the Donetsk People's Republics. Basically, his pretext for war was to demilitarize Ukraine, denazify Ukraine, and the slogan "Своих не бросаем" in Russian, it means we do not forget our own, we stick up for our own. That means those people in the LNR and DNR in Donbass region. Now, as we've seen these territorial losses after the successful Ukraine counteroffensive, which led to huge territorial losses for the Russian army in the northeast, the Russians have said it's a tactical retreat to LNR and DNR, but actually what it is, it's just a kind of a desperate move by Vladimir Putin to make these territories Russian.
Thank you very much, Danny. That's Danny Armstrong. Thank you so much. Right, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We've got more to come in a moment. Well, if you just joined me, this is GB News. Stay with me. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 5:02. The latest from the GB newsroom. With the Labour Party conference now well underway in Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer has announced plans to end the UK's dependence on fossil fuels by 2030. The leader of the opposition will use the annual gathering to set out his energy plan and appeal to voters who are, as he says, sick and tired of soaring energy costs. He opened the conference with a tribute to the late Queen.
Knew that the country she came to symbolise is bigger than any one individual or institution. An example that taught us that whatever challenges we face, the value of service endures. And a reminder that the creativity, the hard work, the enterprise that defines this nation is as abundant now as it ever was.
The Deputy Labour leader says Britain's at a crossroads as she addressed her party's annual conference. During a lengthy speech, Angela Rayner vowed Labour would raise economic standards by clawing back public money from those who failed to deliver for taxpayers. She outlined the party's plans for new rights for workers, announcing what she calls a fair work standard. It aims to guarantee job security, training and union access. She also promised to pump money back into pockets of local communities.
The moment of choice is upon us. Our movement to show our country what we can do together. A Labour government to unite this country through the darkest times ahead. A Labour government to hand power back to the people and the places that once powered Britain. And a Labour government that will always be on the side of working people.
The leader of the RMT union warns the railway industry is in crisis. During a fringe meeting at the Labour Party conference, Mick Lynch criticised public service contracts and claimed a number of train operators are close to collapse. However, he did say a meeting with Transport Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan was a step forward, although no progress has been made in breaking the deadlock. Voting is underway in Italy and it could see the election of the country's most right-wing government since World War II and its first female Prime Minister. An alliance led by Giorgia Meloni called Brothers of Italy appeared on course for victory when the last opinion polls were published. However, support for the left-leaning Five Star movement has picked up in recent days. Voting continues until 10 p.m. UK time. The Defence Secretary plans to spend at least £52 billion on Britain's military in response to Russian aggression. In his first interview since Liz Truss became Prime Minister, Ben Wallace said it would be used to grow Britain's armed forces. He told the Sunday Telegraph the 3% spending increase comes after decades of defending against cuts. The Foreign Secretary will travel to Asia tomorrow as part of Britain's diplomatic tilt towards the region. The Foreign Ministry says James Cleverly will start his 3-day trip in Japan, then head to South Korea and Singapore. He'll also attend the state funeral of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during that trip. A clean-up operation's underway after Tropical Storm Fiona devastated Canada's Atlantic coastline. Hundreds of thousands of people are without power and a state of emergency has been declared, though there have been no reports of injuries or deaths. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has deployed the military to help with the country's recovery.
There have been evacuation orders issued. Hundreds of thousands of people are without power. There are reports of roads washed out and homes destroyed. We've all seen the images. This is a very powerful and dangerous storm.
And a flotilla lit up parts of the River Thames in London last night as a tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth. As part of an installation called Reflections, 150 illuminated boats travelled from Albert Bridge to Tower Bridge at 7 o'clock. The Queen's row barge Gloriana, rowed by Ben Fogle, was the centrepiece. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana.
So it is fast approaching 8 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, of course, there's so many exciting things because in this hour, my panel will be joining me. We'll be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today, it's political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. Still to come, each Sunday at 5 o'clock, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. Remember this?
I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts.
Right, said Fred. They're going to be joining me in the studio in a moment. They are a multi-platinum duo. They've had a number of hits in 70 countries around the world, releasing 9 albums and reaching 30 million in global sales. We'll talk highs, lows, lessons learned, and what comes next on The Outside. And at 5:20, it's the Great British Debate, and I'm asking, is Liz Truss onto something? Only 2 days after Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng lifted the ban on bankers' bonuses to entice more foreign investment in the UK, it looks like the government's plan is actually working. Scottish fund managers and bankers from New York are set to move to England in droves as Liz Truss's mini-budget makes London a more attractive place to do business. And at 5:50, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, tells GB News that Labour have a one-way ticket to the keys to number 10. Email us gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, it is time for this.
I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts.
Yes, I know, I couldn't resist. So for Outside this week, I'm joined by pop duo sensation Right Said Fred. Now, you might remember the brothers from the 1991 hit I'm Too Sexy. I can't believe it. That's like 31 years ago. Oh, my God, 31 years. Where did it go? And during their amazing career, the pair have had a number of hits in 70 different countries around the world. They've accumulated over 25 million in sales. The pop duo were the first British band to get a debut #1 in the US since the Beatles in 1964, and they originally from East Grinstead have performed alongside a number of big names, as well as singing with our late Queen and Nelson Mandela. Now, the music duo have turned to writing, having released a book titled Still Too Sexy. We'll be the judge of that, I'm pleased to say. They're here, Fred and Richard Fairbanks from Right Said Fred.
Good point. That's a very good point.
Wow. So which one's which?
I think you should have a question mark.
I'm Fred.
You're Fred.
Richard. I'm Richard.
You're Richard. Who was the one ripping his shirt off?
Me.
Both of us.
But both of us did.
In that little shop.
He was the first.
I was
yeah,
the first one.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have a stylist. We didn't have any clothes. So it's
Took our clothes off.
in the absence of a stylist, you take your kit off.
Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah.
So how did this all sort of start then? What were you doing for you to suddenly end up in a pop band? Were you singing before?
Oh yeah,
Yes. Yeah, we went on. Our first tour was 1978 with Suicide, who were a New York sort of electronica duo. And during that tour, we did shows with Joy Division and the
Joy
Addicts.
Division,
Yeah, Joy Division, yeah.
New Order.
New Order.
Yeah, they were New Order, yeah.
And so we did. Then we went. We're one of those bands. We're in and out of deals all through the 80s, getting nowhere really fast, you know. And then we kind of like just thought, let's dump everything we've ever done, and meet. So we met up with Rob Manzoli, he was the guitar player, and so we just agreed to write something fresh. And the first song we actually wrote together was "I'm Too Sexy."
Yep.
And how long did it take you to write that?
It didn't take us that long. It's just we didn't have any money, so we couldn't get the studio.
Yeah.
So we were Rich and I were working, so we were working to save up to go to the studio. So overall, it took about 4 to 5 months to get it together. But that's partly because we were skint.
Well, I thought you were going to say that it took us like 3 minutes, because sometimes these big hits, because this was a massive hit, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this was huge. It's like all over the world.
Yeah.
And I can remember saying, "I'm too sexy." Everybody did it. I mean, everybody did the "I'm too sexy" for my thing.
Yes, exactly.
How did you come up with that idea? What was it that you didn't have any clothes? You thought, "I'm too sexy," and then suddenly
he did it.
No, we had another song running in the studio. And the bass line for the song was da 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 on the keyboard, and it was, I think, it was really hot, and I can't remember exactly why. But I went into there was a basement studio attached to this guy's house, and I walked into his bedroom, and he had one of those old Victorian wardrobes with a mirror cut into the door, and I could still hear this. So I started singing, "I'm too sexy for my shirt," and that was it. That was it. We just worked. Rob and I fell about laughing. Fred wasn't quite sure.
I was unsure to begin with.
Really?
He's a bit of a Bob Dylan fan, so it's a bit serious.
And I tend to do the lyrics, so I was thinking, well, what am I going to do with this? So then eventually we had the idea for I'm a model, and then I said, okay, this is sort of about narcissism, and this is.
And Fred was dating a model at the time.
And I was dating a model at the time. So,
it sounded a bit like "I'm a model." Was that Ultravox or Vienna or something?
No, that was us.
Was it not that one?
Oh, you mean Kraftwerk?
Kraftwerk. That's the one I was thinking. That's good. I'm a model and looking good.
Yeah. They were fantastic.
Kraftwerk, great.
They were great. What kind of influences were you? Also, you said Kraftwerk is great. Joy Division, you.
I mean, our influence was more early 70s glam rock, really. And we liked ridiculous pop, like Mark Bolan and
the Tubes.
Glam,
Remember the Tubes?
and Talking Heads. That's sort of where.
Squiddy Politti.
Yeah, Squiddy Politti.
Not so much, no, but...
He recorded one word at a time.
Did he?
That's what you're told.
I didn't know
I don't know how true that is.
That is interesting.
Green, his name was, wasn't it?
So talk to me about the sort of how your career evolved. What have you been doing, and sort of where have you been going? Because you've done loads of different things.
Yes, we have. Yeah,
and you've won lots of awards as well.
Yes, we've won lots of not lots. We've got 3 BMIs and a couple of Ivor Novellos, and we've always been independent, so we've never been part of the machine. So we tend to have to work despite the music industry. So we work in the margins because we're not part of their little gang, you know. Yeah. So and we get, like with the book.
Still too sexy. They are still too sexy.
We get cancelled a lot.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we do. So we've been currently cancelled by HMV, Sister Ray, Waterstones, Rough Trade, and there's a literary festival we were invited onto called Louder Than Words that happens in Manchester in November, and they've just cancelled us.
Well, when you say cancelled, do you actually mean that they said, look, we won't put your books on? They've actually told you that?
They've told us.
They specifically said that?
Yes. Because we won't have your book and we won't have you on, is what... Louder Than Words have cancelled us.
Oh, really? So you have specifically been told by these people?
Yes, we have. Yeah. Absolutely right.
Well, that's fair enough, God.
Yep.
I mean, this world of cancellation...
it's mind-numbing.
Isn't it ridiculous?
It is, yeah.
Although some people, I mean, because it's slightly hypocritical, because in some senses you think that person shouldn't be doing what they're doing. You do everything to stop them from doing it. Yeah. But then on the other hand, if it's happening to you, it's not a...
No, I personally think the audiences should always decide. Yeah. So I don't think any platform on Twitter should be banned. And if they're insulting and rude, then the thing to do is for people to block the account, and the account will die on its own.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. We didn't think it would be quite so controversial to just say what you think. Do you know what I mean? Back in the day, I just didn't think that was going to be a problem in the UK.
Me too. Yeah.
And then I think in the last couple of years, I've realised, and we both had, that the country we were growing up in is not quite the country we thought it was.
Yeah.
That's what's happened.
I'd also thought we'd be drowned out by other musicians, the normal musicians that speak out, like the Gallaghers and Lily Allen and Stormzy and Billy Bragg. I thought we would just disappear into the background because there'd be much bigger names speaking out, but apparently not.
Well, sometimes people just there does become sometimes almost a lynch mob mentality. Sometimes
it does, yes.
And there's lots of people who have experienced that as well. Yeah. Now, I want to come to the fact that you do actually work with Taylor Swift then.
Yeah, no, what happened?
What happened with that?
Right, with Taylor Swift, it's
Swiftie.
Swiftie.
Swiftie, have you met her?
Swiftie.
You met her?
Swiftie?
You met
No,
her?
we haven't. No, she was very sweet. She sent us some flowers and thanked us for the use of the song. So what she did, she used a part of "I'm Too Sexy" and rewrote it to her benefit, to her liking. And because we're the original writers, we have to be credited. And in the press said it was a sample. They said the same with Drake, and they said the same with Beyonce. It's not a sample. It's a co-write because we have to be credited as the original writers. So you ends up as a co-writer.
Do you make money out of that?
Yes.
Oh, and I want. So did this make you rich? Your career? I'm so nosy.
Yeah, but it did.
It could have made us richer.
It could have made us richer if we'd been smarter. And also, we walked away. The celebrity thing we hated. We did about 2 years of it. So when we played the game when they said jump, we said how high. We did all that stuff. And by about 93, 94, I think we just thought that we
weren't very good at it.
No, we're not.
Some people are really good at the red carpet
yeah.
thing and doing the pose in front of the board, the publicity boards. Some people are just really good at it, and we just weren't. And we got invited to a red carpet thing in Leicester Square. And we saw all the cameras and the people, and we just thought, we can't do this. This is
we got so drunk.
So we went up to a pub just up the road, got absolutely slaughtered, and then we did it.
And what was your? Did you do the full rock star type thing then when you were making all the money? And
no, not really.
Were you quite sensible?
We were criticised, in fact, by the label in America for not acting famous enough.
Have we?
Yes, we didn't like limos or security, so we used to send them away. I fell into the trap a little bit. I did a lot of drugs and slept around, that sort of, but nothing. We didn't engage in the celebrity thing very much because we didn't really like it. And we don't hang out with other musicians. I find them quite tiresome most of the time. So it was all celebrities.
I remember when Fred, we were in a club once and Fred wanted to go down to the dance floor and dance. And
in Miami,
So the bouncers went down first and all joined hands to clear the people, to clear the people away so that he could dance in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
I mean, that's that level.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
I hate all that stuff.
Yeah,
and I want to go to the gym, be left alone, and walk around. I think where we are now is a pretty healthy place.
I'm
really.
wondering, how old are you guys?
I'm
Is that rude to
60.
ask?
Well, I'm 66 in November.
Really?
And I'm 69.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys look great.
Yeah, thank you.
It's my birthday, in fact, 2 days ago.
Really?
Yes, it was.
It was, yeah.
Was it 3 days?
Or was it 22nd?
What star sign does that make you?
I'm on the cusp with Libra.
Oh God, I never get on with Libra. Libra, man.
What about
At least you're not a Virgo.
What about
They're the worst. I've had some very horrible.
I'm Scorpio.
Oh, Scorpio. I'm a Cancerian. We get on with
well
that. Now, you had a clip that went viral. Talk to me about this clip. Then we'll play it.
Is this one in the car?
Yeah, this is the one.
We went to a radio show in Germany. I think it was in Munich or somewhere. It was South Germany. I think it was Munich. And the radio station's Antenna. And we got there for a breakfast show, and they suddenly said, "Will you sing in the car?" So we went, "Okay, fine." And the guys in Germany, there's a type of music called Schlager, which is sort of their folk music,
traditional sort of.
And a lot of young people are now reinventing it. It used to be a bit old school, but now it's got new energy. And De Schroeder, I think I'm pronounced that right, had a version of "I'm Too Sexy." They said, "Will we do it in the car with these guys?" We said, "Of course we will."
Oh, well, let's hear it.
It went mad.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love, love's going to leave me. I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts. I'm too sexy for Milan, too sexy for Milan, New York and Japan, too sexy for Japan.
Well, it's ageless, that song. The song is ageless.
It seems to be.
It seems to be, yeah.
If anybody couldn't see the images, they were in a car. Or it looked like, was it a limo?
No, it was SUV.
It was an SUV, very big SUV.
Yeah.
And all the instruments were in the car. Were they actually playing that in the car?
They were playing, but it was
There's a
pre-recorded as well.
Trumpet, trombone and things like that.
And they're a good band. They actually play that traditional German stuff really, really well.
They're very good.
Really good.
Fantastic. So what are you guys doing now then? What's happening?
We're trying to sell a book that everybody's banning.
Okay, they're not banning, but what's still too sexy? What is it about?
And then we're in the studio. We're doing some book signings. So we're going to W.H. Smith have been fantastic, are supporting us. And then we're looking at shows next year. So we've been approached. The agents that hated us 2 years ago, promoters that refused to speak to us. Apparently now we're okay.
Well, that happened.
Yes.
I mean, that happened to us.
We've been sprayed down. We're healthy now.
Well, you know, look, that song in particular is ageless.
Yes.
What would you say would be your other biggest hit? Because that song's the only one that I always remember.
Deeply Dippy, You're My Mate.
Deeply Dippy.
Don't Talk, Just Kiss, Stand Up.
Yeah. Stand Up was big in Japan.
Stand Up's a big song. But Stand Up's a big song.
Well, it depends on the country you're in, because Deeply Dippy was a big hit here, but died of death in America.
Yeah.
But you got a #1 in the States.
Yes, we've had 4 #1.
Incredible. That's incredible, isn't it? So you should be really rich. What do you spend it on? What do you spend it on, you boys?
It's all gone.
It's all good.
It's all gone.
Well, that's all good. Listen,
medical equipment mostly.
Such a pleasure, really.
No.
Really?
To keep it going, you know. Clear.
Well, listen, you look fabulous. I mean, I can't believe how old you guys are.
Thank you.
And it's amazing to think it was like 31 years ago.
I don't. It's absolutely
God, I feel
scary.
so old. Right said, Fred. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
It's been such a pleasure. That is right said, Fred Fairbairn, and also his brother. Fantastic to have them here. Right, coming up, it's the Great British Debate. I'm asking, is Liz Truss onto something? 2 days after Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng lifted the ban on bankers' bonuses to entice more foreign investment in the UK, it looks like the government's plan is actually working. Scottish fund managers and bankers from New York are set to move here in droves, apparently. So what do you think? We'll be back after this break.
Sounds like bollocks to me.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio, and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness,
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good afternoon, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I do apologise if anybody heard the language just before the break, so apologies. Hopefully it didn't offend any of our viewers. But it is time now for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Liz Truss onto something? Bankers from Edinburgh and New York are set to migrate to London following the Chancellor's mini-budget, where Kwasi Kwarteng lifted the cap on bankers' bonuses. Now, proponents of the move would argue that London is now becoming a more attractive place to do business, in turn boosting its position on the world stage. Moreover, with Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng dropping the top rate of income tax to 40%, it's now far lower than Scotland's 46%. Labour has said that the economic plans are only benefiting the wealthy, and lower earners also have a big part to play in driving the economy.
Just as we were in 1997, we're now at a crossroads. The moment of choice is upon us. Our movement to show our country what we can do together. The next Labour government will pump money back into the pockets of local communities, the people who built Britain.
Of course, that was the voice of Angela Rayner. Well, Friday, the Chancellor unveiled a package of measures as part of his mini-budget. Here's a quick reminder. There'll be a new single high rate of income tax of 40%. There'll be a cap to basic rate tax of to 19%. From 2023. The planned increase in corporation tax is cancelled. It will remain at 19%. There were cuts to stamp duty too, particularly for first-time buyers. There was reform of the pension charge cap to free up pension funds to invest in the UK. There were changes to liberalise planning laws, which might upset some Tory MPs. Planned duty rises on alcohol have also been called off. And the cap on bankers' bonuses, which we just mentioned, has been lifted. The Chancellor said their idea there was to aid the finance sector's competitiveness. So with London gearing up for the mass influx of bankers, it seems on the surface, Truss's plans are actually starting to take shape. So for this debate this hour, I'm asking, is Liz Truss onto something? I'm joined now by Mark Francois. He's the Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford. So, Mark, thank you very much for joining me. What do you think, then, in your opinion, will her plans work?
I think they will. You've got to remember that the bankers' bonus cap, which I'll come on to in a moment, is one of a part of it's a package of measures in the so-called mini budget. So, firstly, 1.25% off people's national insurance. So most people will see more money in their pay packet by Christmas. 2, 1 penny off income tax from next April. So more money into people's pay packets. We're now not going to increase corporation tax as previously proposed from 19% to 25%. It will stay at 19%. So businesses that employ people will have more money in profits to reinvest in their businesses to grow and to create jobs. The bankers' bonuses, the problem with it was because most banks were constrained in the bonuses that they could pay. What they did was they made up for it by just whacking up many bankers' salaries. So ironically, a lot of well-paid bankers liked the bonus cap because it meant they got a massive salary increase to compensate. So as the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng argued very forcefully on Friday in the Commons, I was there, actually, if the cap was meant to restrict bankers' remuneration, it had precisely the opposite effect. It basically didn't work. And then the last bit of, or another bit of the package is to reduce the top rate of income tax from 45% to 40%. Well, we did something similar under George Osborne in 2013 when we reduced the top rate from 50% to 45%. And what actually happened? The tax take went up. So this is what Kwasi and Liz Truss are arguing, is as you reduce these high rates of taxation, you give people more incentive to work harder, to take a risk, to start a business, to generate wealth, and then to employ people. And a rising tide floats all boats. So yes, sorry if that's a slightly long answer, but I've tried to give a comprehensive one. Do I think these measures will work? Well, they've worked in the past.
OK, well, stay there, Mark, because I want to have a chat with the former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards. Peter, you've heard what Mark says. Surely lifting a cap on bankers' bonuses, from what he said, is a good thing in the way, because otherwise you'll end up paying higher salaries and it all works differently. You end up potentially reducing the tax take. And also the fact that it'll encourage more investment in this country. Surely that's a good thing.
Well, I don't think the changes announced this week were good at all. And if we're looking at this through the lens of investment, then bankers moving from Edinburgh to London has little or no impact because we're all part of one UK. And although the Scottish Parliament has tax-raising powers, by the Barnett formula, Scotland gets money from UK taxpayers that is allocated by the UK Treasury. So that doesn't have an impact. And then New York bankers coming to London, well, if a New York banker comes and works in London for 3 or 4 or 5 years for a lower rate of tax than they would have last year, then they buy a £5 million house in Chelsea with the extra take-home pay they've got. Do you really regard that as investment? I regard investment as building something for the whole country that lasts for 5 or 10 years, not a giveaway to the elites.
Well, you've asked me a question. I do actually regard that as an investment. It's almost investment in people, isn't it? Because it's encouraging people to come to this country. Surely getting people to come and work in this country is all part of investing in this country as well. So in answer to your question, yes, I do actually. But I also want to ask you then, with regard to the Labour Party and their kind of plans, what is your view, though? Because Keir Starmer was talking about net zero carbon, but yet it's the same thing as net zero anyway. I mean, surely that's not a direction we should be going in, and nobody even liked net zero.
Well, I quite liked what Keir Starmer announced overnight. We're on the first day of Labour conference. There'll be tons of announcement this week. But investing in renewables, well, if you diversify the pool of energy, as in any economic question, if there's more of it available, including renewables, we hope that will bring down prices and household bills. It will be popular at Labour conference because we're all environmentalists in Labour to a certain extent. And it's also a long-term decision that perhaps we would criticise the Conservative government for not taking, that the Keir Starmer announcement on renewables investment, that's not going to bear fruit next week or next month or even next year. But it's a plan for 10 to 20 years. And without wishing to be partisan all the time, you'll be aware that Theresa May cut our energy reserves, particularly in terms of gas. And as of today, that decision doesn't look terribly clever.
Well, so very briefly then, so what would the Labour Party do in terms of trying to solve the economic crisis? And give me what you think their top policy would be, their top sort of money spending or saving policy would be.
Well, Labour have had two really prominent pledges recently. One was a windfall tax that was belatedly adopted by Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, until he lost his role. And one was to not proceed with the rise to national insurance. And Labour won that argument, and the Conservatives have scrapped it. And Labour should not be shy about saying they've won the argument politically and intellectually.
Francois, about that then, because Peter Edwards is of the opinion that actually it was the Labour Party that came up with the idea of windfall taxes, and that it was, of course, and that you've copied them.
Oh, look, come on. I mean, I grew up on a working class council estate in Basildon. And it has always slightly got up my nose when champagne socialists living in £1 million houses in North London think it's the end of the world when a government has the temerity to give working class people back more of their own money. The difference.
Mark, I grew up in Essex like you. I'm an Essex man like you, Mark.
Yeah, okay, but you're not Keir Starmer. And look,
I'm in Essex right now, Mark. Just like you're in Essex right now.
Sorry, let Mark finish then. Let Mark finish.
I'll have mine.
Peter, let Mark finish, then you can come back.
Right. There's a fundamental difference between socialists and conservatives. Conservatives believe in the policies of enterprise and of hard work and reward. Socialists believe in the politics of envy, and that is already apparent in Labour's response to this mini budget. You can't tax your way out of a pandemic. You have to grow your way out, and that's exactly what this mini budget is designed to do. Socialists will always believe in the politics of envy. That's why they keep losing general elections.
Peter, last word to you. You've got about 30 seconds.
I made a point about policy. Mark responded with two insults about champagne socialism and envy. I think that tells you a lot about Conservative values.
Well, Peter Edwards, thank you very much for that. And Mark Francois, thank you so much for your views. Thank you. Right, so what do you think? You've heard all that. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We'll continue our Great British debate, and I'm asking, is Liz Truss onto something? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, political editor, The Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. It's 5:34. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. With the Labour Party conference underway in Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer has announced plans to end the UK's dependence on fossil fuels by 2030. The leader of the opposition will use the annual gathering to set out his energy plan and appeal to voters who are struggling with the soaring energy costs. The Deputy Labour leader says Britain is at a crossroads as she addressed her party's annual conference. Angela Rayner outlined Labour's plans for new workers' rights, announcing what she called a fair work standard. It aims to guarantee job security, training and union access. She also promised to pump money back into pockets of local communities.
We were in 1997, we're now at a crossroads. The moment of choice is upon us. Our movement to show our country what we can do together. The next Labour government will pump money back into the pockets of local communities, the people who built Britain.
The leader of the RMT union warns the railway industry is in crisis. During a fringe meeting at the Labour Party conference, Mick Lynch criticised public service contracts and claimed a number of train operators are close to collapse. However, he did say a meeting with Transport Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan was a step forwards, although no progress has been made in breaking the deadlock. A police investigation into an online threat against the Harry Potter writer J.K. Rowling has been dropped. The author received an online message saying, "Don't worry, you are next," after she expressed support for the Satanic Verses writer Sir Salman Rushdie, who was stabbed at an event in New York last month. Police Scotland say their inquiries found the threat was made from out with the UK and there will be no further action. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
We are GB News. And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you've just joined me, where have you been? I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now it's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Liz Truss on to something? Bankers from Edinburgh and New York are set to migrate to London following the Chancellor's mini-budget, where Kwasi Kwarteng lifted the cap on bankers' bonuses. Proponents of the move would argue London is now becoming a more attractive place to do business. But others say that economic plans are only benefiting the wealthy. So with all of this happening and London gearing up for a mass influx of bankers, it seems on the surface that the plans are already starting to take shape. So what do you think? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Liz Truss onto something? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. All right, I'll start with you then, Nigel. I don't mean to do that. It's only because, Nigel, what do you think then? Because you're Labour, so, you know,
I thought the budget was completely bonkers. The whole idea of the budget was an emergency budget to deal with the cost of living crisis.
Right.
Didn't do any of those things. And then suddenly the unexpected bit was the getting rid of the 45p top rate of tax. And that I just couldn't understand, that no one had been calling for it. We hadn't thought it was coming. The idea is that you give 660,000 people an extra tax bunch of at least 10,000 a year. These are not people who are suffering from the cost of living. And someone earning £1 million will get £40,000 back. And the idea that people will suddenly come flooding in just because of this seems to me completely pie in the sky.
Well, it sounds like they are. I mean, that's what. Well, sounds like
where are the vacancies? I mean, presumably there are bankers sitting in their banks at the moment who are doing the job.
But the way you talk is as if there's lots of people earning millions, and there aren't lots and lots of people earning millions. There's only probably a handful of people earning millions.
Well, over 150,000 is only 660,000 people. So, no, we're not talking about a huge number of people. But if you're there to try and actually deal with the cost of living, why is the money not going to the people who are most affected by the cost of living crisis?
So where would you say the money that is going to help people in terms of, obviously, there's a national insurance thing that they've reversed. So that is...
Which benefits the rich.
Well, and those... It benefits pretty much everybody.
Well, no, I mean...
but everybody who works will get benefit out of that.
The top earners will get £1,800 back on that change, and at the bottom end of the earnings scale, they'll get £7 back. That is hardly going to deal with their energy bills that have already gone up.
OK, but then there's also support for the energy bill, so they've also put in support, so that does help everybody. You said that there's nothing there.
No, I think
there is something there.
The price freeze was absolutely right.
So that's something that's there, so it's incorrect to say there's nothing.
He did that, but in fact that was done before we got to the budget. We're talking about...
but lots of things were mentioned before the budget, but but that is all part of it, so that has to be included. There is something to help people.
I agree that the price freeze was the right thing to do, and of course that was a Labour idea.
Nana, it's like, I love you, Nigel, but it's like trying to get blood out of a stone to get a socialist to accept that there's a decent Conservative policy. Now, what have they done for the working class and the people who are skint and struggling to pay? Nana's right. They have basically subsidised everybody's energy bills, the wealthy and also the people who are skint. They are reducing the basic level of income tax. That will help people. You don't have to pay a penny of income tax until you earn over £12,500.
Which they've frozen.
Which
they've frozen.
Rishi Sunak froze
taxes are actually going up there on that basis.
But Nigel, what more do you want them to do, bearing in mind that we only have a certain pot of money? I like Mark Francois, but I'm going to slightly disagree with him, because we are focusing this 45% on bankers. How many of the 45% bracket are actual bankers? You've got TV personalities earning over £150,000. You've got radio personalities. You've got CEOs of companies who are earning significant amounts of money. Now, how is that going to help the national recovery? So I disagree with him about that. Yeah. Maybe you should give a banker from New York a golden handshake to say welcome to the... But don't let Gary Lineker pay 5% less tax.
Well, I think the problem... I mean, the 45% tax thing, I think, is a slight red herring anyway. And
then why do it? It costs £2 billion.
I think for people...
It's unnecessary.
No, what I'm saying in that respect is that people are just clinging on to it as though they can't see the wood from the trees, because you clung on to that but forgot that all the handouts in terms of energy and the support that the government are giving, and, of course, the income tax...
But why do this one?
OK, good question. But then why are the Labour Party not focusing on this sort of thing and focusing on... Zero carbon.
The Labour Party...
I mean, the Labour Party conference, the big thing is there's a little logo that's called a greener Labour or whatever it says, and it's like, why is that? Why is that your main...
The Labour Party doesn't believe in trickle-down economics, which is obviously what Liz Truss does believe in. That was discredited when Ronald Reagan tried it, subsequently Margaret Thatcher tried it. It doesn't actually work. The idea that the wealth then trickles down to everybody in the form of jobs hasn't happened, because the wealth creators keep the wealth themselves. And that's why this particular thing... I don't understand why he did it.
There was support for companies as well, so instead of allowing that higher rate to come up, that was stopped. And there's lots of things that went in there that would help the normal person on the street. I just don't buy that.
Well, not under that budget it didn't. But
no, I think it did.
I do take the point about the price freeze. I think it should have been frozen earlier. But anyway, it is a start in the right direction. If you want to actually help people deal with the cost of living crisis, target the money that you've got at the people who really need it. You could do it on on universal credit or something like that. These are people who will really struggle to survive.
There are people who aren't on any form of universal credit who are skint.
Yeah.
You can't just use universal credit as...
No, I'm giving you an example.
OK,
I'm just giving you an example.
There'll be families listening to us all around the country who can barely pay their mortgage.
No, do something about wages then. I mean, so if you've got...
I'm a business owner, so do you expect someone like me just to pay someone more money because of the cost of living?
No, but what I expect to see is the government actually helping. Certainly, they can do it in the public sector. I appreciate it's more difficult in private business, but in the public sector, they could certainly raise wages to help with the cost of living.
Well, they would argue that once they have to raise the salary of a nurse, then the teachers are going to go out on strike because they want the pro rata. Nigel,
teachers too.
No, Nigel, I think you're underestimating the financial and fiscal situation this country is in. Labour always Labour love throwing the money tree at Tories.
Yeah, but hang on.
You're growing a money tree live on air.
Here we have a budget. So
you're watering it.
Well, at the moment that they're spending about £150 billion, so they're throwing money all over the place. I'm arguing they're throwing it at the wrong places. And the kind of reaction we had to this budget, the market started have no confidence in it. The pound dived to its worst
No, but they always...
for 37 years. And the result is homeowners will end up paying for it because the Bank of England will have to put up mortgages to control the inflation that Liz Truss and the Chancellor are causing.
Well, look, something had to be done, and the markets always... They can
but that wasn't it.
Yeah, but the markets can... I think the Tories have actually got more worry about what will happen internally. They need to worry about themselves, breaking themselves up.
Well, the Tories don't like it. An awful lot of Tory MPs don't like any of this either.
Well, you know, the thing is, though, there's a lot of things... We are where we are, partly because of a lot of their policies anyway. So if they don't like this, then what do they like? That's the Labour Party. I don't know what their policies are, but the one they are talking about is zero carbon.
We're in uncharted waters. So I think it's
a
wrong.
Big gamble,
I think it's wrong to just play party politics.
We need to see if we need to stop the party politics. I agree, and I think it's important that all the parties try and rally behind something to try and get.
Yeah, but they won't. They won't. That's the problem.
Not even the Conservative Party themselves. Well, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice onto the show. Let's see what you think about the topics that we're discussing. Right, where should we go to? Should we go to...
Where are we going?
Where are we?
Should we go Milton Keynes?
Milton Keynes.
A lot of roundabouts and squares. Let's have a chat to Dr. Seshni Moodliar-Rensburg. Seshni, thank you very much for joining us. Right, so what do you think? Is Liz Truss onto something? Is there a plan potentially a good idea?
Good evening, Nana, and good evening, everyone. It's a very interesting discussion, and I do think that on face value of the plan, I somewhat agree with 50% of it, like Nigel was explaining. You know, in terms of the stamp duty reduction, reversing the NI, and also £400 discount for energy, I think those are very positive points in terms of the plan which Liz and Kwasi Kwarteng have proposed. But in terms of the other aspects of the tax cuts, I think it's something we need to question a bit more, because that's going to benefit a lot of the people that are only earning more than 150,000, which is not the majority of the population. And therefore, obviously, there's a lot of criticism around this, Nana.
Well, perhaps it's because that's such a high burden of tax in any case. And, you know, 45, I mean, the Labour Party initially wanted 50, wasn't it? And then they split the difference to 45. So it is interesting. But, Seshni, thank you very much for your thoughts. That's Dr. Seshni Moodliar-Rensburg. She's there in Milton Keynes. She was that great British voice. Yeah. See, a lot of people questioning this this percentage, aren't they? A lot of people saying, oh, it's not enough, it's not fair, the 150,000 earners are making a bit... Well, I just think, you know, look, let's just see if it works. Let's give it a go, right?
OK, I mean, if all this leads to 2.5% growth, which is the target that Liz Truss is setting herself, I'd be prepared to come back and say, yeah, she's got a point. But no economist says it'll ever get to that level.
Well, that's not right. There are economists.
This is the tribe of hope over experience.
When over 300 economists said that her plan wasn't going to work, and it did.
Well, I'm not sure Margaret Thatcher's plans worked either, but there you go.
Well, I think it did.
But you can't just say no economists. So there will be economists out there.
Yeah.
That, again, is not true.
You find one.
Well, let's have a quick look. Well, let's see what our viewers and listeners think. Let's see what they think. Let's see what they've been saying. Helen says, why would bankers move here with record inflation, poor transport links, sky-high housing prices and tanking pound and a population that's going to massively curb its spending, add in Brexit, visas and the UK's isolation from the rest of Europe? Doesn't sound very appealing. I don't know, I quite like the sound of it. I'm joking. Let's see what Elliot says. I'm not sure it will work. This is a completely new territory, so the effects won't really be understood for at least a year. I'm holding fire until I see tangible results one way or another. Very sensible, Elliot. Nicholas says, Truss's policies will add to the wealth divide in the country. The rich get richer whilst the poor get poorer. It's the same old story. Oh, so our viewers aren't really up for that either. Our listeners don't think it is. Well, I think give it a go. Give it a go. Let's see. Right, though, let's cheer things up. Let's go for Supplement Sunday, the part of the show where me and my panel look at some of the other stories making the papers today. I'm joined now, if you just tuned in, by political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. Right, first off, Danny, you've got one from The Guardian about how the cost of living crisis is affecting things.
I've managed to find one about food, believe it or not.
Lovely.
The rising cost of living has claimed an unlikely culinary victim this Sunday roast dinner, basically because people can't afford to heat the oven up. And that's why they are now apparently 23% of cooks saying they use the oven and hob less, 21% increasingly turning to the microwave, according to a BBC Good Food study. But what they do say, and this is something that I really enjoy, a lot of people now are going to the supermarkets around about 7 o'clock at night, and they're looking for those yellow discounted stickers, and they're keeping that food that has a sell-by date of midnight that day, and they're keeping it in their fridge for days because that food won't spoil as long as it's kept in the fridge.
Well, that's very sensible. Very sensible. I like that. And I won't make any quips about food.
No, please don't. I'm a glutton for punishment.
Oh, very good. You made one for yourself. Well, now, Nigel, you've got one as well. You've got one from the Mail Online about people called Nigel.
About people called Nigel. A name I hate, by the way.
Really?
I've been stuck with it. Yeah. On movies, that always the weedy, nerdy character who never gets the girl is always called Nigel.
Is it?
And so, it's not my favourite name, and no one is ever called Nigel nowadays.
No.
I don't think there have been any Nigels born recently. Anyway, this is a publican called Nigel, not surprisingly, and he's holding a party to get all Nigels together. 400 turned up from the US, Zimbabwe, Nicaragua. He didn't get quite as many as he did when he tried the same thing in 2019, so it sounds like Nigels are a dying breed.
What a dull party that must have been. Full of Nigels.
Oh, boring. They never get the girls.
Described by Nigel himself.
I wouldn't
go. Well, I've got one for you, and this is my one, and I'm not going to let this go. Sources have claimed that Holly and Phil, yes, remember those guys, their names were not actually on the official Westminster list. Yes, this morning's presenters created a hoo-ha when they turned up at Westminster Hall with two colleagues last week to film a special segment for their ITV show, seeming to skip the lengthy queue outside in order to see the late monarch's coffin ahead of a state funeral. So let's see what my panel make of that. Yes, so they weren't actually on the list. The petition for having them sacked on change.org is at 72,000 now.
Yeah, I have to say I don't understand this. I'm not sure how they got in. I've been working in Parliament for 36 years, and we were told we could not go down to see the lying estate because people were queuing. We wanted to go, we had to queue with everybody else. They couldn't have filmed that segment from the press
did it
box.
Outside, they went outside and they did a little thing on an iPhone, I think it was, or something.
Yeah, I mean, it is just a question of how they did it. If they did skip the queue, they're right to get the kind of castigation they are at the moment.
Briefly from you.
I queued for over 7 hours with an 89-year-old ex-Royal Marine, and I think if they'd have skipped past us, there would have been uproar. But my only caveat to this is that if David Beckham hadn't queued for 12 hours, it wouldn't be the story it is.
Do you think?
Of course.
I think people apparently were heckling as they were going past, saying that, to get to the back of the queue. So that's what it says. But in response, Holly and Phil said on their show, like hundreds of accredited broadcasters and journalists, we were given official permission to access the hall. It was strictly for the purpose of reporting on the event for millions of people in the UK who have not been able to visit Westminster in person. Please know that we would never jump the queue. OK. Well, on today's show, we've been asking, will Starmer's green gamble pay off? And according to our Twitter poll, well, it's gone sort of up one.
Wow.
8% people say yes, whereas 92% of people say no. What's your views then? What do you think? Final word to you, Danny. And
I think those polls represent the average working class man and woman on the street.
Well, I mean, certainly, I think the policy has landed rather badly, judging by that poll, which is a pity, but there you go.
But why do you think he would think that was a good idea, seeing as net zero has gone down like a lead?
I think because he believes in growth as well, that all the political parties do, this is the way to do it.
Net zero's a Pandora's box. It's been opened. He's got to stick with it.
A Pandora's box full of carbon.
He's got to stick with it. He's got to stick with it.
Well, he does, yes, unfortunately for him. But listen, it's been such a pleasure. I'm going to say a big thank you so much to my panel, political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, thank you very much for joining me. And also a big thank you to broadcaster and journalist. There you go, Danny, I've done it again. Danny Kelly. And as ever, a big thank you to you at home for joining me. It's been such an honour to do the show again. It's nice to be back to normal, I have to say. Don't forget you can catch up with all of the stuff here. Just stream it live on YouTube, download the app. I'll see you next week on Friday at 4. I'll leave you with a weather forecast.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be turning cloudier and windier as a